Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 55 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back into the White Knuckle Podcast, episode number 55. Let me just quickly say, for those of you who don't normally listen to our shows till the end, you better listen to this one till the end. No, it's not for any kind of product plug or anything like that, although we will have a special Ozonics deal for you at the end of the show. But this is a great interview with a great guy with a strong set of core values and a strong set of ethics, and just a real treasure, in my opinion. When Todd called me and told me that he had the inventor of shed hunting lined up to do a show with us, I thought he was nuts, and he probably is nuts, but he wasn't kidding. This guy's been doing shed hunting since 1984, back when it probably wasn't cool, and nobody ever thought of doing it. He was doing it, and you'll hear him talk about the videos that he's made over the course of the years, and again, it was just a treat to do. So this is episode number 1 of our shed hunting series. I hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed getting to sit and listen to him. Without further ado, here is Mr. Bentley Coben. Hey everybody, welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Today I have joined with me on the other end of the line, as I often do, Mr. Todd Pringnitz, my esteemed co-host, and a guy that I've never spoken to before, but I've heard a lot about here in just the last few days, Mr. Bentley Coben. Bentley, how's it going?
Really good, Jason.
Thanks for coming on the show. Todd, why don't you explain to the people that are listening how it is that you know Bentley?
Well, I actually just talked with Bentley for the first time last night, but I've known about Bentley for so many years now. I feel like a little kid. This is like the most anticipation I've ever had for a show, specifically a shed show this time of year. But many, many years ago now, I think I was trying to figure out how many years. I think about 15 or 16 years ago. Maybe not quite that long. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was down in Illinois hunting, and I ended up running into Andy and Ed Nevar. Were down there hunting with a friend of ours, and Andy had killed the buck of a lifetime that night. He killed like a 205 megabuck. And when I showed up into camp, it was the biggest whitetail I'd ever seen, and I was a dumb young kid, green as green can get, from Michigan. So I saw this deer, and I absolutely couldn't. I lost it. So Andy and Ed and I became very good friends that night, and they broke out. At the time, we didn't have cell phones or anything. So Andy busted out their photo album, and they were showing me, and I could very quickly tell everybody in camp was like worshiping this Andy and Ed Nevar guy, not just because they had, killed these big ones, but everybody was like, dude, these guys are crazy. You got to see their pictures. So they started flipping through these pictures with me in the photo album. And when it got to the shed hunting pictures, I was absolutely dumbfounded, because I had heard of shed hunting before. I'd seen sheds. I mean, it was just, back then it wasn't something really people talked about too much. And I saw their pictures from Canada of shed hunting with Bentley Coben, and I couldn't believe it. And from that night on, Bentley was stuck in the back of my brain as like the shed hunting legend. And these guys, Andy and Ed, were obviously having the time of their life, because they had just shot, the buck of their lifetime or whatever. And it was one of the most unbelievable nights of my life. But from that time on, I kind of was like, who is this Bentley Coben character? Because these guys I'm talking to seemed like the whitetail legends I've ever met, and they kept talking so highly of Bentley. So that's how I knew Bentley. And so it is just an honor for us to have you on the show, but I can't tell you.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. I never knew you by name. I had heard of you. I grew up sort of in the same area that Ed and Andy, and then another gentleman that I think hung out with all you guys, the Ashley boys, over where I grew up. So I had heard about all this for several years, and then just through the process of whatever, I ran into Ed one morning at Quick Trip in the in Portage, and he was telling me about the shed trip that they had been on, and so I'd never was able to put a name with the whole story, but I've seen a couple of the pictures as well, and it's pretty jaw dropping.
Well, we had a great time. It could have been 2002 when the Niebuhr boys first came, and they brought a friend of theirs, JD, with them, a young lad, and there was supposed to be one other gentleman come, their brother Wayne, I believe, and he couldn't come, so Tim Ashley filled in for them. And they came for a 3.5-day shed hunt, and they picked 228 antlers up in 3.5 days. Tim Ashley picked a 96-inch whitetail shed up.
Oh my goodness!
And Ed picked up a 220-inch set of mule deer sheds, and Andy picked up an 82-inch 5-point fresh whitetail shed, which 2 years later I took a gentleman from Maine and he picked up the match, and it was 92 inches the match to it. And that day though, we used to start, we only looked for 2 hours at a time, and at that time they didn't have GPSs with them. And Tim, he was usually always late getting back, and he'd come walking in, with a armful of sheds. And when we first started, I'm not saying that there was more white antlers, because we still pick up probably 70% white antlers and then fresh ones. And, we just have a great time, and I've got to meet people like the Niebuhr boys and Tim Ashley, and Tim's came back every year since, and the Niebuhr boys, just through work and different things that they haven't been able to come back. But their brother Wayne came back with the Miller boys from the North American Shed Hunters Club, and Wayne picked up 31 antlers on one walk, a matched set of Boone and Crockett 4x4s, accompanied that. Those were all fresh, those 31 antlers, and he was some pump that day as well. So I've been fortunate enough to make people's dreams come true, if that's the way to put it. But we've had a lot of fun and met some great guys.
Now, Bentley, if I can, I know that you are known for being an extremely humble guy, but just to give people an idea, I don't know if you invented shed hunting, but you are one of the absolute legends in shed hunting in Saskatchewan, Canada. There's no doubt about it. If you had to guess how many shed antlers you've picked up over the years, what would your number be?
I told Gordon Eastman one time, Gordon came to my place, and, I thought I had 10,000 antlers. And, and the phone used to ring off the wall with people wanting to buy them, and I've never wanted to sell an antler, so this is how I got into. My wife come up, we were bird outfitters, and we come up with having people come to our place, and she said we might as well take them looking for sheds in the spring too. So as sell our antlers, we had guests come to our home, and I took them out to some of my favorite spots, and it's still going today.
Wow, man. Well, I know I can't take it any longer. Bentley, we have a bit of a surprise for you. On the other line, we have a special guest.
Nice.
Hey, Bentley, it's Andy Nevar here.
Hello, Andy. How are you?
I miss you, buddy. How are you doing up there?
Really good. You know what? Andy picked up a really nice set of 4x4 whitetail sheds, and my guide I had that day with us was Mr. Shane Hunter, and the following year after the Niebuhr boys come up, my guide Shane shoots a big whitetail on one of my Saskatchewan Trophy Bucks videos, and what does Andy do? Puts those fresh sheds that he gave me $300 a day to come and look for in a box and sends them back to Shane. How good is that?
You know what, Bentley? I appreciate you saying that. I think about that all the time. One of the most amazing things about Bentley is he's always going to turn around and something nice that somebody did. He is the nicest gentleman you'll ever want to be around. He can go, say he's got 10,000 sheds laying around his house. He can walk up to the pile, grab one out of the middle of it from 10 years ago and tell you where it was found, who found it, and the whole story about that antler. The gentleman is just an amazing individual to spend time with. You really are, Bentley.
Well, you are too, Andy. And, that day when you called me and said, I just got a 203 or 5-inch whitetail at a camp, and you were pretty pumped that day as well.
Oh,
that was great to hear.
No, it was amazing. And that was not too long after my father passed. And that meant so much to me, and to share with my friends. Like, I was mentioning to Todd the other day, you invite people up to your paradise and to take them shed hunting. You open your doors. You and Diane are amazing. You open your doors and you open your land, and it's a place that people should go and see and meet you and experience what we've done up there. You're one of a kind, second to none. Highly recommend anybody who's listening to this, if they want an experience of a lifetime, to just meet you and hang out in Testier, Saskatchewan, and walk some of the beautiful land you take your clients on. It was amazing, and I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. And like I said, the people that have came to our place, and we've had them from all over, but we love the people from Wisconsin. Even though that they can drink more beer than we can, we still love them.
I was going to say, I'll say this much, man. I thought I went shed hunting before, and then I met the Nevars. And the first time I went shed hunting, I actually had Wayne and his buddy Russ come down, and I had just moved to Iowa. And so Wayne's like a unique personality, very, very serious about shed hunting. And I think the first day we walked something like 17 miles or something, and I was so exhausted. I could hardly put one foot in front of the other one. And then the next day we walked like 14 miles. And then I realized, now I know why these guys find so many sheds. And Andy and Ed are the same way. We've had Iowa shed hunts down here, and it's contagious. As soon as you start shed hunting with these guys, they cover so much ground. It's inevitable you're going to find more sheds. But that's one of the things that I felt so schooled when they came down and shed hunted with us. I'm like, most of the time we'd spend a couple hours looking around the truck, and then we go drink beer, basically. And then the Nevars come around, and it's like, dude, I have never met guys who were so hardcore into shed hunting, and now they've turned me into it, where I've certainly have found nowhere near the thousands, but for me, just finding an antler of a buck now that I know and that I've hunted, I mean, it's as good, if not better, than killing them, because you still get to hunt them, the following year. So, Bentley, question for you is, you spend all this time shed hunting. You're hunting the same animals, like hunting is as much a part of the deal as shed hunting?
Well, what it is we go out, and now with the cameras, we're getting pictures, picking up the sheds. Before, through the 90s, we were into picking up consecutive years from the same buck. And then in, I think, 1998 was the first year when I took Andy Berkey came from Michigan, and a young gentleman, Leif Swalen, came from Minnesota. They didn't know each other, and that's what we've had people come to our place. And since then, it's been tougher because they've taken 7,000 antlers home from our place, our clients. And so it's harder to put consecutive years together, but
7,000. Bentley, how much area are you covering? I mean, over how much area do you have access to for your clients and yourself to shed hunt?
We look on public land, and we'll travel out an hour and a half, maybe sometimes 2 hours out one way, and then we used to go on 2-hour walks. Now we go on 4-hour walks. So if we're traveling out a ways, we'll get out there and we'll go on a 4-hour walk, come back, meet, because if somebody found a match or whatever, I'll go and help them look for it. If somebody else wants to come, what the gentleman's doing, he's inviting you to where he found a big antler. If you find that match, guess what? You got to give it away. But he's in where there may be 2 bucks, and maybe you have a chance to find another big antler. I've had guys cry. I said, you know what's going to happen when you find that 19th antler? You're going to have to give it away.
Oh my God!
And they do.
Bentley, did you invent that rule? Because this is not the first time I've been instructed that's how this whole thing goes. If you find someone else's match side, you got to give it to them.
Hey, that's a gentleman's way of doing it.
Right. I couldn't agree with it more. I just wondered where it started. Who came up with it?
Well,
I think we just found out.
I know that. Yeah, I know that that's the way we do it. And if there's because sometimes I have 6 people from 6 different places all meet at our place, and they've got to be friends. But if they come back together at the same time after that 4-hour walk, each one has an individual antler that matches up. They don't have to give it away because one didn't contribute or who found it first. They didn't know the other one found it. If he wants to give it away in hopes that somebody will, maybe a year later he's going to have a chance to give one back. And, by taking the same people for all these years, Toby Montgomery comes from Maine, and Toby has gave a lot of antlers away. Toby picked up the match antler to Andy's 82-incher. It's 92 inches. It was laying 400 yards away from where Andy picked up the one. And, so they've each got one. And, it's just that's the way that it goes. But if somebody takes the other guy there, it's the gentleman's rule to give that antler away. What I can guarantee people when they come to our place, if we go out, let's say I'm scouting through the year and I have a pile of antlers when people get there. And if I take somebody out and they find the match to one in my pile, I will give you my shed. I don't care whether it's a 100-incher. I gave a lot of 100-inch antlers away. And to give a 100-inch antler away, deep down inside me, I'm out and I want to find that other side. But, I've had to give some nice antlers away. And that's the way that it goes when you make a commitment. But this shed antler thing, what it's gained with us is if you have a good friend and you take him to your best spot, and in hopes that 2 weeks later you didn't hear that he was back at your spot with another friend of his, and if you can share your secret spots, go back there together with each other, you will gain friendships that will last like brothers for a long time. And I've done that with a set called with Big Larry, with my friend Gerhard Stubbe on one of my shed antler videos that I made, Treasures in the Buckbrush. Gerhard and I each found singular antlers, a consecutive 10-year set off of one buck where he's net Boone and Crockett 5 years in a row. And I gave my antlers all to Gerhard. And, it's a single person will never put a series together. It's very seldom, but it takes a good group effort, and they're not my sheds, they're our sheds. And if you can do that and not sell them, so one guy's got them at home and maybe you can share them back and forth, have them at his house for a month, show them to your friends, and get along like that. Like Andy sending the set back to Shane, they're not really Shane's antlers. They're Andy's antlers. Shane displays them with his head, but we all know whose antlers they are. Who found them, that moment. We got all the pictures. That's the way I look at it. That's what shed hunting has done for us.
I love you, Bentley Coben. Would you mind?
I told you.
Dude, is there a way I can somehow get adopted into your Canadian family? I just, I used to hunt with some guys back in the day that were really, really antler greedy, I would put it, where they were killing for scores and trying to beat the record books and all that. And I very quickly realized that was not my style. It wasn't why I did it. I just absolutely am inside out for whitetails, and I have been since I was 12 years old and saw a doe and 2 fawns, first time ever bow hunting. And I've been so nuts over it. I think when I met Andy and Ed Nevar in that camp, it was the first guys I ever met who I thought were honestly even crazier than I was, which was crazy to me. And to hear their stories over the years, and if I smiled any harder, my head would crack in half. I'll put it that way.
Well, it's like I said, it's the whitetail gods will grab a hold of you. My first time I went shed hunting, the very first time I went in 85, I was deer hunting and I stumbled across an 80-inch 4-point antler. The next year in 86, we went back out to look for the other side with my good friend Tony Pyatt, and Tony picked up a 97-inch antler. That was the second antler we ever found. Then in 87, I went out looking, and on the first time I went out with my boy, my youngest son, and we found a matched Boone & Crockett 6x6, 180-incher, and the year before's off of the same deer. So that's kind of how it started, and, you know, that feeling inside me was like a rush, a warmth in my heart that lasted for a week, that feeling. And we just kept on going day after day after day. And finally, there was a big pile of antlers on the ground.
What year did you come out with Treasures in the Buckbrush, Bentley?
I produced that I filmed it in 94 and come out with it in 95. And it was after when Gordon Eastman came to my place in 1988, and he was filming. He had a video, Whitetail Country, and he was filming In Search of a Monster Whitetail. And he come back in 89. We finished it, and that was the first camera that I ran was Gordon Eastman's big Betacam. And then we produced. He invited me to his place a few times, and in 94 we produced In Search of a Monster Whitetail. And then in the next year, I produced 2 on my own, Treasures in the Buckbrush and Saskatchewan Trophy Bucks.
And are they all the Treasures in the Buckbrush? Is that primarily shed hunting, or
it's all shed hunting?
It's okay. That's what I thought. Wow,
well, that's how Ed and I.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bentley.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that's how Ed and I learned of Bentley, is watching Treasures in the Buckbrush over and over and over again until we couldn't stand it anymore and we had to go on Bentley's adventure. I remember watching that dozens of times and sitting there going, yeah, you can go walk a little piece here, a little piece there, and find your local deer, but to get up in God's country, up in Tessier, Saskatchewan, and have an opportunity at a moose paddle, an elk shed, a mule deer shed, a whitetail shed, was a passion, a dream of ours. And once we met Bentley and got an opportunity to spend some time with him, that became second to none to the person that we were talking to. Bentley is, legend is an easy word to throw around. I'm thinking a pioneer in the sense of etiquette. And I think the etiquette in shed hunting is something that needs to be talked more about, and Bentley is the best at it. It's the times it's time you share in the etiquette of shed hunting, like golf. There's a way to go about it, and the permission and how you go about doing it is. And I've learned from the best and spent time with Bentley, and that's why I passed those sheds back to Shane Hunter. It was easy to do. He sent me a picture, said, I killed that buck you found the sheds too. The next day I was in a box on the way back to Saskatchewan to be with, to hang underneath the rack like Bentley says it is. And I'm so happy to hear that that's the case. And that's what we've learned from Bentley.
Yeah, the shed hunting DVD is still selling today. Gordon Eastman told me that if he produces a video, it will sell for 8 years. Well, we produced that in 1995, and it is still selling today. Treasures in the Buckbrush. I've had requests to make another shed hunting DVD, but I'm just not sure we could ever make one like that again. It's if I did, I would be following along behind my shed hunters, and instead of them thinking on their own, do I want to turn right down that path or do I want to go left, they'd be looking at me. And like, you can't have that look on a person's face by rehearsing or putting an antler out. All of the DVDs that I got are all real, and there's nothing like that feeling, when that person comes walking back. It's people say, is there going to be anybody else in camp when I come? I said, I hope so, because guess what? When you're not going to ever see them when we split up, when we leave the vehicle, you'll never see them until they come back to the vehicle, and you're going to be sitting at that vehicle waiting for them to come back to see what they got. And I'm excited watching Ed or Andy walk over the hill with an armful of antlers as what I found, and that's what it takes, and that's what you call sharing. That's what shed hunting with a group of people will do for somebody.
Isn't that we got to experience the same thing. I think really it was one of our first white knuckle get-togethers, and Bentley, from the very beginning, we always had when we did our white knuckle videos. We've been doing it for 10 years. We quit doing DVDs. Now we do just an online series. But from the very beginning, we wanted to show the whole story behind a hunt, which started this time of the year during shed season, and to this day, those were the comments we got from people was, we love the fact you show all the shed hunts, because we're so crazy about these antlers. I mean, to find one of these sheds, it's like killing them. And I get so jacked up finding a shed antler that some people think I'm on acid or something, because I literally completely lose my mind when I find an antler that I know. And that's like, I'm not too worried about the quantities, because, you take what you have. For me, it's individual animals, like looking for those sheds and being able to find one. It's just like such a treasure. It's such a rarity to be able to find them in these, especially in the Iowa countryside where it's, it's rough and tumble, hilly, thick, nasty stuff. But the camaraderie that I learned through Andy and Ed and Wayne, and just the guys that when we had all of our group of guys together at one time, we had like a 20 person shed hunt. We ended up finding an absolute pile of shed antlers, including some huge world class deer. And that's what I learned from it. It was so dang much fun. Whenever we have a team shed hunt, I'm always like kind of maintaining where people are, making sure they're not going out of the boundaries and all that. So I usually don't find very many antlers, and I really don't care, because just like what you were talking about, just to be able to get a group of guys out, cover a piece of territory, and then see everybody, what'd you find? What'd you find? What'd you bring back? See if you can match up sheds. That's what the fun is. It's finding the sheds is cool, but to be able to share that back at camp with a group of guys, it is a brotherhood. And I'll tell you, it's something that unfortunately not everybody can experience, because they don't live in places like I live, or even Andy and Jason up in Wisconsin, and certainly not in Saskatchewan where you get out there see it. But the fact you're sharing it with so many people is just, dude, it's cool, man. I'm like, I feel smitten.
Well, I've been like really privileged and blessed to have the great people that come to our place. And, some of them saved to come for 1 year, and now it's their annual holiday. And, Doug and Tammy Coleman from Idaho, and Ed and Gary and Mary Beth from Connecticut, Roger from Washington, D.C., and I've had some great people come, and Roger had a bad heart, and his doctor says, you can't go back there because you're going to die. He says, what a place to die. And he was the editor of National Geographic. At 73 years old, he comes back last year, and his kidneys were working at 20%. His doctor phones him in Minneapolis in the airport, and Roger says, you can't stop me. I'm going to Saskatchewan. So that's
God bless America.
The kind of people we have. Yeah, that's the people we have coming to our place, and and Ed and Clyde from Wisconsin,
How Bentley? When you were growing up, you grew up in Saskatchewan, Canada, I'm assuming. Were you always a hunter? Like, how'd you end up falling into, becoming Bentley Coben, the shed antler king?
Going out to my grandparents' farm as a little wee boy. I mean, at 3, 4, 5 years old, the whitetails hanging on the garage and the big one hanging in the house. And my dad took us. We only got to go bird hunting as like little 3, 4, 5-year-olds, and he took us all the time. I mean, we went every day. And but my mom wouldn't let us go deer hunting until we were teenagers. And I went hunting deer. I've never missed a day of deer season since 1966. I went every day of deer hunting season, like in the rifle season, which is in November. And then my wife bought me a bow in 1980, and our bow season is September, muzzleloader in October, and then deer hunting in November. And I've got to go all the time, and we've got vast tracts of public land around our place, and we've just got opportunity. And I've met some great people. We used to, and what it was about, I see people knocking people's way of hunting, and we've done it all. We bushed, we drove down the road. I've sat in tree stands, letting deer come to us, took kids out hunting. That's when we started making the movies it was about. And Jeff LeBaron started the North American Shed Hunters Club, and he called me and asked if I would be an advisor. And I said, I would like to be a part of Take a Kid Shed Hunting. And that's what I promoted. And that was back in 1999, I believe Jeff started that. And so since then, and the videos, it was always about taking youngsters out and introducing them into the outdoors and giving them first chance. And so that's what kind of started it all, was sitting back behind the scene and watching somebody do something and seeing the look on their face, and that's how you share.
Wow. So Bentley, you're still doing this today. I mean, in a few months, you're going to have folks in camp.
We've been booked solid, Yeah, we're still doing it. They're wanting to come now, but I really don't like people coming until the snow goes. We can go out. I could take you shed hunting when there's snow on the ground, and we'd find a couple where the people that come is right into the middle of May, and they have the best luck.
Wow. So you guys, because you guys get so much more snow up there. So, I mean, they're buried, basically.
Yeah, and if you come too early and it snows, and then you're not going to find an antler with 6 inches of snow on top of it. So it's just best to wait till the snow goes and then come, and I like to, fill the seats in the vehicle and go out and have an adventure.
Oh, Bentley, you're still offering these hunts you said you were booked for this year, but so if people are interested who are listening, they can come and hunt with you. Are you available, or do you have available spaces for 2019?
And I'm sure that we have the odd space. What I do is I wait until everybody gets back to me on the dates that they want, and then we have some spots. It's not that we haven't got any for 2018. I've just got about 5 groups that I haven't got back to on their dates yet. So,
perfect.
I don't really know when the snow is going to go. At the end of March, it might be gone, and then we'll start right away. And it's just, I don't want disappointment. I can only guarantee 3 things coming to my place: clean, warm, dry bed, my wife's cooking, and one heck of a playground. And one more thing, I'm going to find an antler. When they come back to the vehicle and somebody hasn't got any antlers and maybe somebody else has, what the problem was? They didn't look hard enough.
Yep. Going back to the old the NEVAR rule, which is you get what you put in. But I want to hear some more Andy Nevar, Bentley Coben stories. Andy, do you have a good story about a day or something? Now, I remember seeing the pictures of inside of Bentley sheds and seeing literally hundreds of sets of sheds all hanging up. Like, would you describe to people what Bentley's setup is like?
Well, when we flew up there and first met Bentley, picked us up at the airport, drove us up to Tessier, and he pulled into his garage. Essentially is a large metal building attached to his home. He opens the garage door, and it is, how tall are your ceilings in there, Bentley? 20 feet tall?
16.
16 feet tall. Boone and Crockett sets of whitetail mule deer antlers, wall to wall, piles of antlers like you've never seen piles of antlers. And like I said before, you could walk up to one of those piles, reach in 5 feet, rattle around, find the biggest, darkest, gnarliest antler you've ever seen in your life. And Bentley will tell you the story of that deer, where it was from, who found it, when it was found, where the matches are, the cover of Big Buck magazine that it was issued on. And it is like, if he says he's got 10,000, he's underestimating. And of those, and of that many, he can pick up every single one of them and tell you the story about them.
Unbelievable.
And so we sit down in the refrigerator area where you kind of take your boots off and you get ready, and we're beyond jacked up to go. And he's got a pile next to his chair, and he's like, "Well, I found them last week," and we're like, "You found those last week?" And that pile he found last week was bigger than any pile I'd ever found, and it was the hospitality, Diane's cooking, everything that we experienced up there. You can't put your finger on one thing. The 230 set that Ed found, the sheds that I found, and the friendships we've made in the country you walk is amazing. Be in shape, be prepared, and if you ever get a chance to get an opportunity to go with Bentley, it's something you'll never forget. And that's why I'm here today. Is the guy is as true and as honest and as passionate about kids and ethics and everything that's right about hunting is Bentley Coben.
Well, thank you very much. That's the kind of thing, Andy, that I've heard, and it's just that people that come to our place, we're out, when we go for a walk, we're looking for 90-inch antlers, and somebody's going to find one. And sometimes we have everybody out. I took two brothers, Ed and Clyde, from your area, and they had grand slams. The day before, I got stuck in the middle of a mud hole and spoilt their day. The next day, I said, "Boys, I will show you where I was trying to take you." And we went there the next day, and they both had grand slams with elk, moose, mule deer, and whitetails, and like a 240-inch set of mule deer sheds. And they both had grand slams, but they thought positive, and that's what it takes. You have to have that positive attitude and never give up. Don't say whoa in a mud hole.
Right.
Well, and I'm going to tell you one other thing. This is what I've learned over the years through the Neves. Is if you're going to go shed hunting with at this caliber, make sure you bring a good supply of baby powder, because I'm here to tell you, you're going to get some Mary Chafin Carpenter going on, huh, Neves?
Yep, those in the blisters. I've got blisters really bad up at Bentley's, and it makes you miserable. You got to be prepared. You got to be prepared to walk 15, 18, 20 miles, full bore, hardcore, change of shoes, change of everything. And then go back for a wonderful meal from Diane. And regardless of what you find, like when you go fishing and you don't catch nothing, you're still fishing on a beautiful lake and a beautiful scenery. You go up to see Bentley, or anytime you go shed hunting, you don't have to find nothing. You're out. Where else would you rather be than walking through a beautiful piece of forest, scouting where you're about to go, what you're about to hunt next year. Finding something is always the bonus, but it's the experience and spending time with somebody like Bentley or your friends or your family that make shed hunting enjoyable for me. And matching something up and giving your buddy your sheds. He shoots the buck, you hand him the set you found last year. And it binds friendship, it binds people, and that's what's good about what we're talking about in Bentley is the pioneer. That's who we learn from, and it's awesome to pass it on to people that we know and have a conversation like this that people can hear and understand. And it's not about who found the most, the biggest, whose property did you sneak onto to get. It's about doing it right and ethically and sharing it with the people that you love.
Yeah, and that's it. And and we've all met our best friends through antlers and the great outdoors, not just antlers. It's hunting adventures, and I learned from my dad. So, and
we all did.
And
we all did, Bentley.
Yeah, you talk about that it was just after your father passed away that you shot your best buck, and in hopes you feel that he was with you when that moment happened.
Absolutely.
That's what it's about.
Absolutely.
And the fact that I actually got to share in that moment too, it's like a godly thing. My dad was never a big hunter. He was a hunter, but didn't really care too much about it. He was more about just hanging out with his buddies. And we bought a cabin, and so it got me into hunting. But when I met guys like Andy and Ed, honestly, like, were two of the guys that kind of tipped my scales like in a whole different direction, because at the time I was hanging out with some different guys who were very ego driven. And as soon as I met Andy and Ed, I was just like, they just fit my bill, and they were like the brothers I never had. And so through them, I've been able to enjoy hunting so much more, just being able to be exposed to so many cool people in Neva over the years. Just think of the trade shows back in the day, all the guys that would walk up to the booth. Andy would bring somebody, hey, you need to meet this guy, and it would turn into a friend, and just that camaraderie. We get that through trade shows and stuff as well. But just to talk with, Jason, I just want to thank you for putting these podcasts together. One for Jason Syons on the other line there. We wouldn't have started doing these, and it's turned into my favorite aspect of my professional life, I guess you would say, is just telling the stories of people that I feel need to be told. And Bentley, you are one of those guys that we need a heck of a lot more of in this industry, because sometimes even myself, we get lost in the business aspects of it. And slowly but surely, you kind of, sometimes forget what is important. We're worried about sponsors and this and that and the other, because we got to pay bills, and, it's a business still. But conversations like these fire me up so much where I didn't sleep last night hardly even thinking about that. And like tonight, forget about it. Like, all I'm going to be thinking about is shed hunting and the words that we've talked about. And it's so cool to be able to inspire the next generation. And that's, Jason can attest. We get the emails and the messages from people who are like, we love your podcast, we love your videos, we love all this, because it's so non-typical in the hunting industry today, where we're putting hunting first and business second. And you certainly are one of those guys that I know I've looked up to, and I didn't even know you just because of what the Nevar said, just knowing those guys and their families. So dude, I can't tell you how excited I am. I want to go shed hunting right now.
Well, I thank Todd and Jason and Andy to join us in this conversation. And it's really been, I look forward to it all day here. I've been just waiting for the call and happy to be a part of it.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? You've been doing this for a long time. I don't know that anybody has or hasn't documented it like you have since the mid-'80s. Certainly, there's some wisdom in the years that you've gotten to go shed hunting in these areas. Is there any kind of tips that you'd give a guy like me who's maybe found a 5-gallon bucket full of sheds in his life, in terms of what would a secret be that you could give us?
Well, the secret is what we do is I'll find 80% of the antlers in the feeding areas, maybe 10% on the trails and 10% in the bedding areas. But when you're walking along, when we were looking for the collection of Big Larry, there was a skidoo track crisscrossed across the country. When the quads come out, they beat it with quads. There was a man track on every trail, and out of all the antlers off of that deer, for 10 years, only 2 sets are fresh. So one antler from each set laid out on the ground for at least one shed hunting season, and the match to the 8th and 9th year. The 8th year had a 93-inch 6-point single side, and it took 2 shed hunting seasons to find the match. It was 75 yards away, laying points up on the edge of the poplars. I went there over 200 times and not gave up. Don't look at a man track. Don't think about somebody else having it. Believe it's there, and when you're walking along, put your safety glasses on and just think deer horns. Like, don't let your mind veer off into some other part of what's going on. Only think of looking for that shed. That's the best advice I can give you.
I'm so ADD, Bentley. I am the worst shed hunter ever, probably, because I probably walk past 1,000 sheds. Because, to be honest, for me, it's an outlet. Like, I honestly, around here, I get to shed hunt right around my house every day. And every day during shed season. And so, for me, when I go out, it's as much of a scouting trip, I guess you'd say, as much as looking for antlers. And so, like, half of the time I'm thinking of business, half of the time I'm thinking of new product designs, all the different crap that goes through your brain when you're doing this stuff. So for me, and that's the beauty of it, just like hunting, everybody has a different reason or a passion or an outlet. And for me, half of it is just to go walk my frustrations of business and different things off, get some great exercise. But you guys are professional antler finders, and the Nevars are professional antler finders. And, I tell you this much, I've shed hunted enough with Andy now where, like, if you're on a team shed hunt with these guys, in 10 seconds flat, they are gone.
Right. I was going to say, bring your track shoes.
Man. And I mean, they hammer. And I'm very analytical. I like to pick apart each ridge and walk down each ridge or whatever. And I actually have a great story about that. The first time I went hunting with Wayne and Russ down here, we were walking in some different timber, and we'd gotten some permission I was just driving around looking where the deer were in the evenings. I wasn't a shed hunting professional at all. I never really shed hunted before. And so I was living in Iowa, so single. Every night I just drive around the countryside and look for the deer. And I just would find the deer herd, see where all the tracks were crossing the road, and I got permission to hunt all these different pieces. And we went in there, and within 10 seconds, Russ and Wayne were gone. And I was like, did they even walk these ridges, So I started just picking apart these ridges and just going up and down, back and forth every 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, or whatever. And sure enough, I started stacking up the racks. And to the point where I would call Wayne every time because I wanted to film it, every single recovery. And he'd be like, where are you at? I'm like, on the same ridge. He's like, are you freaking kidding me? They got pissed almost because they were like, dude, where are you finding all these racks? And I'm like, dude, you had already walked past them. You're already on 20 ridges over in 10 seconds flat. And so for me, I love to slow down. You find those areas where there's lots of deer sign, lots of deer poop. They're there. You can tell they're there. And that's what I love, is just pick apart different areas. But I know the Nevar boys, they like to cover ground because they're looking for big bone. And so, if they walk past a half dozen little dink 4 sides or 3 sides or young deer, they don't really care. They're trying to find some bigger bone. So that's what I picked apart of is each and every person in a shed group, like everybody has a different mindset, different personality, and that's what makes it so much fun to shed hunt with other guys. Is because, dude, you don't necessarily have to be the fastest walker covering those grounds. Sometimes being slow and meticulous, especially in timber and ridges and stuff, that's my secret. That's what I really enjoy, especially around my property where, you're hunting individual animals. You got to cover everything with a fine-tooth comb. So maybe describe, Bentley, the type of terrain that you guys are looking in. If somebody's interested in going and shed hunting with you, and I am, to me, I'm thinking of a white knuckle trip where we have the Nevars and myself and Jason. Andy, could you think of more fun than that?
Oh, absolutely. I've been dreaming to get back up and walk side by side with Bentley. It's a experience of a lifetime to be up there. The terrain is, and Bentley can talk more about it, but it's somewhat easy walking, isn't it, Bentley?
It is pretty easy walking, like on the flats in the buckbrush, and we have sand hills, and we've got aspen trees here, and all the bush in the country, it seems, is all fallen down. So we got some deadfall, and it makes it for tough walking. When I'm walking along, I'll look at a glance, and then we'll look down at 15 feet and then look right at your feet. Because, when people come, they got a backpack on their back and they got a pair of binoculars around their neck. And I said, what do you got the binoculars for? Oh, so I can look for antlers. I said, when you find that antler, it is going to be inside 10 feet. So I don't have binoculars. I got a nice set of EL Swarovskis. I've never taken them shed hunting. They're at home.
He's right. I don't think that I've ever seen anyone find one, outside of standing in a cornfield or a picked bean field or whatever. I don't think that there's been too many folks that have found them with binoculars, has there?
The reason
some of the guys.
Go ahead.
The reason I carry them is when you're 12 miles on the day and you see that stick 80 yards away that might be a shed, but you don't know for sure, and you're saving yourself the 80-yard walk over to it to make sure that it is still a stick and not an antler. You're just saving pieces walked to eliminate the fact that, okay, that isn't a shed. I found a huge set of moose paddles once, glassing a hillside, and all I saw was the tips sticking up through the grass on the other side of a creek that I never would have went in that area, but I sat down for a second and glassed it. So it goes both ways. I use it to save steps on a long 8-hour, 10-hour shed hunting day. But Bentley's right. Most of the time, it's wow, there it is, right in front of you.
You're right.
And boy, what a feeling that
everybody says. Yeah. The best when you can pick up a big chunk of bone.
Now, Bentley, do you guys, when you're out shed hunting on most of your stuff, when you're finding these deer, are some of them or a lot of them deer that and are actually following, or is it just random?
Well, it depends. If it's like right around our place, we know most of the deer. But, when we're venturing out, an hour and a half into a 30,000 acre pasture, we don't know all the deer. And that's what makes it nice is the surprise.
A 30,000 acre pasture.
Or, maybe 40 sections big.
What? And just for us, North American Americans down here, how big is this section exactly?
640 acres.
Oh, so it's a square mile.
A square mile, yeah.
Okay.
And so this is
holy cannoli.
Where Andy found the 82-inch antler. It is 8 by 20. 20 miles long and 8 miles wide. One pasture. No fields. Not a field in it. Just buckbrush, rolling hills, and poplar bluffs. Aspen bluffs. I know in Wyoming or whatever, a bluff is a rock cliff. Well, a bluff to us is some trees. Just a bluff, and then it'll be open and buckbrush and rolling hills. And once you park the vehicle, you better have that GPS in your hand, because once you go over that hill, it all looks the same. You know, and go till
Bentley, tell the joke about how flat it is up there.
You can watch your dog run away for 3 days.
Wow. So it's just an open train, which, I mean, for shed hunting, you really can't ask for anything better. If you want to cover some territory and find, numbers. Now, Bentley, do you generally find them grouped together?
What you do is like you'll find the core shed area, and what it is it's just like where it's maybe been a bit open and there's juniper growing on the ground, something that they feed on in the wintertime where maybe the snow blew down where they could get feed. And there may be deer will go back and I found up to, 5 years antlers off the same deer all at the same time, all laying in the same spot.
Oh my goodness gracious.
My best was 26 antlers at one glance, or 7 match sets, 5 of them touching one day. You know what? When I first started,
antlers in one glance.
One glance in one bluff, and one of them was the shed off Big Larry. The first antler that I found off of that series was in that 26 antlers.
I mean, what do you even say to that?
I need to quantify this just because I'm a little slower than the rest of you. Did you just say you saw 26 antlers in one glance? From one location, standing in one spot and could see 26 antlers at once. Bentley, I haven't picked up 26 antlers in my life. It sounds like I need to come.
Man,
wow,
I'm gonna have
that's
a hard
incredible.
time sleeping for a week thinking about that. Just that, like, there's people who make these posts on Facebook, Bentley, that show like a shed hunter's dream, and they put all these different antlers on one place, and you actually you're talking about reality. Like, how do you even get them out of the field when you're getting that many antlers?
Well, if you look on some of my posts, my pictures on Bentley Coben Wildlife Productions, there's from Shed Antlers, and there's a bunch of pictures on there. Ed and Andy's photo with Tim Ashley and JD is there where they found the 228 antlers, or Jed. Mag came from Utah, and Jed says he would walk 33 miles on one walk on his GPS when he came back. That's how far he says, this is a joke walking here. And one day he found 47 antlers on one walk, 3 over 100 inches.
Oh,
so,
gosh.
But he is, there's
crazy.
Great shed hunters that have came here. I mean, the Niebuhr boys were the first great shed hunters, and Tim Ashley that came to my place. And Tim went on 6 walks in a row and never found an antler and blew his knee out. So he was hobbling and then picked up the 96-inch whitetail shed. And getting back to the vehicle after the 96-inch whitetail shed picks up a 190-inch set of mule deer antlers. So it isn't covering country. Somewhat it is, but it's looking, just you got to get yourself to the right spot and recognize what you see. So when you get there, don't walk through the core shedding area looking for another spot. You better kind of know what you see, like you're hunting. You're hunting those antlers. It's like walking through the bush looking for buck sign, and it just isn't necessarily where there's a whole bunch of deer crap around, because maybe it was a bunch of does. Mm-hmm. And the bucks may be just close, but there may be 4 or 5, a bachelor group of bucks, and all their antlers will be in one spot just off on the fringe of that heavy populated area.
And I just like everything, experience. And I know Andy can have the same story, but sometimes you just know, like you get the feeling like, okay, time to slow down. You throw the anchor out and you're like, stop, look around. And now I've been hunting here, shed hunting in Iowa long enough. and have the familiarity with this property where I know typically, year after year, generally we're finding sheds, but a lot of it really does depend on crop rotation. And that's what I just put a post up on our site the other day. I had a bunch of standing corn and just took a picture of it or whatever. And, it's all about food. Once you find where they're feeding, once you find where they're bedding, where the deer are, shed hunting's not that difficult. It's just a difficult part is finding those locations where the deer are, because that's what I wasted so much time over the years walking in the wrong areas. And I think that's the case with a lot of guys is they are hunting a property during the fall, and they're hunting their individual bucks or whatever, whether it's a public land piece or private piece, and then they don't have any intel going into shed season. So they just go in blind and assume that they're going to find sheds where they were seeing the deer in the fall. And that's not the case at all. And so it's about picking up those pieces of the puzzle. But a lot of times for me, just like I'm sure all of you, you gotta eliminate the process of elimination. You gotta cover everything. You find the spots that certainly have deer sign, and you find spots that look dead, and you gotta move quickly through the dead spots, get into the zone, and then once you're in the zone, you just slow down and start looking. But it's amazing, man. Some days are meant to be like your brain and the way you look. I have found days where I can just pick, and we call it scooping, huh, Neves?
Yep, scooping.
When you can just scoop them left and right. And then the next day, I'll be out shed hunting with somebody else, and I can't find a freaking antler, and they're picking bone everywhere, and it's just it drives you crazy. But that is kind of the fun part about shed hunting with somebody else, is that you double your odds. And if it's with a good friend, somebody that you can share the experience with, it really doesn't matter who finds them. It's just fun to be a part of it. And I think, Bentley, you pretty much put an exclamation point on that, is that, especially today's day and age, everything's about instant gratification, and finding those sheds and being able to post that selfie on Facebook. And you know what? That's not what it's about. And if that's the only reason you're out there shed hunting, you're not going to find very many sheds with that attitude. I truly
might as well buy them on eBay.
Yeah, you might as well go buy them on eBay. And I saw a post on Facebook the other day. A guy found, and nothing against antler traders, so long as it's legal, you can sell what you want. But but right. I saw a guy who had just found a nice 160 class set or whatever, and was immediately found it yesterday, and he's trying to sell it the next day. And I'm just like, I can't. You couldn't put a price on some of the antlers that I found where it would even be. It's unconceivable to me. And the beauty of it is, you kill these big bucks sometimes when you're lucky, and that's great. But you put them on the wall, and you really can't touch the antlers. The sheds you can handle and fondle and love for the rest of your life.
When people come to my place and pick up a big antler, you know what they do with it? Take it to bed with them that night. Try to rub the bone off of it.
Bentley, you're not supposed to tell that story. No, but it's true. It's true. I'm sitting in my living room right now, looking at the antlers that Bentley has been talking about that I found at his place, are on a mantle above my window. I'm looking at them. I look at them every day. I had Bentley sign antlers from when we left up there. I look at pictures on my wall of those days all the time. If you think it's fun to sit here for the last hour and 20 minutes and talk with Bentley Coben, imagine doing it for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and having dinner with him. Every story he's told is true, and I've heard before, and it makes me smile to hear him again. To spend some time, even on a phone for an hour with you, Bentley, has been a treat, let alone getting maybe the opportunity to spend a few days in the woods with you again would be awesome. And it was a pleasure talking to you, and tell Shane Hunter I miss him, and I hope to see him again sometime soon.
Well, we'll get together, and you'd think that you never left, because the same antlers are in the same spots. It's a guy. I took Toby 8 days in a row. I dropped him off in exactly the same spot. Doug and Tammy came, and we went back and Toby says, we're going to the same spot. I says, well, did you find them all? He said, no. We picked up 76 antlers on the 9th day we went to the same spot. So,
Wow.
That's the way that it is here, but it's such a vast area, and those spots that I took Andy and Ed, well, they're still there, and there's still white ones laying, and we're fortunate is our antlers aren't chewed. All the antlers that they took home from our place haven't got one chew mark on them, and some of them laid out for 25 years.
Wow.
When we picked up the 96-incher, I could look over and see the spot where the shed came off the Hansen buck. And anybody that comes to our place, I will take them to my best spot. They get to keep every antler except for one. If they find the shed off that world record, I believe it's still there. Guess what? It can't go home with them. They can put it in the record book. They can get all the whatever they want. They can't take that antler home.
I'd
And
call that a fair deal.
How many years ago was the one side found, Ben?
3 years after it was shed, 1995.
1995, and you believe the other side to him is still laying out there.
It's still laying there. I think I might have to put the snorkel on. I haven't went swimming yet. I think it's under the water, but we've really looked hard. And to talk about praying, when I walk down those deer trails still, I am praying that I've said that I could care less if I ever found another antler, but I sure would like that one. But one day I may come across it, but I've taken that year that Ed and Andy came to our place, I took them to my best spots, and that's why they found the antlers that they found. And everybody that comes gets the same treatment.
Well, God bless Canada in this particular case, but it makes me, I'm done. I don't even know what to say.
Well,
other than
in Iowa,
we're planning a trip,
Todd,
Jason. Put it on the roster.
I know one thing. I've seen the picture of the buck that Todd shot last year, and there's a big shed laying beside that, and that is one big deer. You guys have got some great bucks in Iowa, and Wisconsin, and all throughout the Midwest, and right down even, into West Virginia. And I remember I went and did a show in West Virginia in the 90s, and I told them there on my speech, guess what? You guys have got great deer in them hills, and they're proving it today. So, and I'm not sure whether it's letting the little buck go, whether it's food plots, whether what it is, but there's some big deer throughout all of North America. It's just when you're walking down that deer trail, think big, think positive, and keep looking, and pretty soon you're going to come across something that's going to really surprise you. That's how you have to think when you're shed hunting.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in to the White Knuckle podcast. I hope you enjoyed that. I don't have a whole lot to say. It was a ton of fun to do, and I'm just going to pretty much leave it at that. Before I let you go, just a couple of items to talk about. If you haven't seen what Ozonics has let us do, what they are doing is they are giving us basically a page within their page. If you go to www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP, you'll see the offer that Ozonics is giving any White Knuckle Productions fan, listener, web watcher, whatever the case may be. You got to check out this deal that they're giving you on the new HR 230 and a dry wash bag and a carrying bag, and it's a great deal. You need to check it out. With that, I'm going to end the show for the day. Again, thank you so much, Bentley Coben, for taking the time to come on our show. It was an absolute treat to have a guy with your integrity, your core values, and your ethics. Thank you so much. Bentley's link to his Facebook page will be in our show notes. Any links that I can put in there to order any of his videos will also be in our show notes. And if you have any questions about Bentley or his operation up there in Saskatchewan, you feel free to email Todd or myself, and we'll get you in touch with Bentley. With that, one more thing. I know I said I was done, but I'm not. We need your iTunes or Stitcher or whatever reviews that we can get on any of the different media outlets that you leave them on. We would definitely appreciate the feedback. For those of you who don't know how to download a podcast, if you have an iPhone, iPad, whatever, just grab your phone or device and go to the iTunes store and search for White Knuckle Podcast. This will help you to download the free podcast app that's produced by Apple. You can subscribe to the show from within that app, and every time I produce an episode, you'll get it downloaded right to your device. For Android listeners, you can download the Stitcher Radio app. That's also free. Search for, again, White Knuckle Podcast, and every time I do a show on there, if you subscribe, you will get it downloaded to your device. For those of you who look at YouTube and listen to this on YouTube, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, please. You'll get everything that we do, every small piece of content we put out, whether it's related to the podcast or whether it's related to a video that we're doing. You're gonna see a whole new series coming up on there that we'll announce here in a few weeks. So with that, I'll end the show for the day. Jason out.